Henry McClure Live. I'll try to give you the Reader's Digest version of why this has been a galactic waste of time and money. And and also I'll try to give you a real snapshot of why we need to put the planning commissions back together. And I'll tell you that as a planning commissioner that was part of the Metropolitan Planning Commission, we did things differently. When the federal highway program got really big during the Eisenhower administration, they had to distribute funds back to the local communities. And you're wondering right now, what the hell does this have to do with this project? Okay, so just remember this term right now called MPO. So the MPO was part of the Federal Highway Association as a public means of getting involvement from the community and saying where they want the federal money to go. And Joan Wagnon appointed me to the Planning Commission in early 2000 after moving back to Topeka. And being a planning commissioner was the biggest thankless job I'd ever had. But the MPO actually, there was a lot of hope. I enjoyed being a planning commissioner, learned a lot, got to know, what's under the fingernails of the planning staff and how they do things. And you get to know what's under the fingernails of the community and um, how everybody wants to choke Topeka to control who gets what. And this is the biggest town of not in my neighborhood. And this is actually a perfect example of not in my neighborhood winning out on this road project because the people that flank the project don't want the road to go through. And here's the crime, the true crime of this is that we have a full set of engineered plans um, by Bartlett and West to put in the road. And the road, I think, has been on the books for 40 years. We'd have to get some old timer to come forward and really say so. Uh, Brett Blackburn, I call him Blackie. Blackie thinks it's been 40 years or more. But now the MTPO should be carrying all the water on this. And I don't think the MTPO has even had a real meeting other than Zoom in 3 years. And so when I was on the MPO and the way they did this was Bob Docking he had to set up who the MPO was. So everywhere there was a Metropolitan Planning Commission, they would be the MPO because you had people from the city, you had people from the county, all a part of the process. Well, federal law requires that this process take place. So the idea is that people in the community actually get to dictate where the funds go, not the one percenters. So that have all the political clout. So we were actually the first MPO in Topeka to ever have public involvement. My group actually held up the approval process for all the money that came into the community because the governing bodies were not complying with federal law. And you want to talk about pissing off a lot of county commissioners. The city, actually, at the time, they put forward a capital improvement program, and but still, all they did was take the federal money and divide it by two. The city got that money, the county got that money, no public involvement. But at least, and the federal law requires that each entity, the county government and the city government, bring forward capital improvement plans. Then you look at those plans and then you weigh out, well, the priorities. Then you take those CIPs and the request for funds, and you take it out to the public. You engage the public, and so technically, one year the county might get all the money because their projects take precedent over the city's projects. And it should never really be 50-50, but you engage the public. This is just like try to introduce a new idea in Topeka. It's all the same people on all the same committees and all the same boards. And that's why Topeka doesn't grow. I don't know who this is. We're going to let that go. Okay, so today, and the county commissioner for that area wants to have this road go through, and I'm willing to help him. One of the county commissioners lives up by is going to see the road, and I don't think he wants the road to come in. And the other fellow will do whatever one of the one percenters says. So anyway, um, and if you lived in Topeka and you know the players, you know exactly who I'm talking about, which is funny, at least to me. So why has this been a galactic waste of time? You know, this was about ready to go and get approved, and then Bill Bunton shit canned the whole project. And he was taking it out on Blackie and Jeff Preisner for something because he didn't get a vote, something else. That for Topeka people that are watching this, that's when Blackie called him a political whore. I don't ever know what Bill Bunton did, but I tell you, I was trying to get him to move out of his office when the form of government changed, and I said, look, why don't you give the city manager, who was Norton Bonaparte, uh, why don't you give Norton the big office? You know, he's running the city now, and that in itself has been a real conflict of who, you know, the city council really wants to run the city so much. I don't know why in the hell they even have a city manager. They got rid of one of the best guys we could have ever had. That was that um, Bill Cochran. You know, Topeka thinks they got to go outside. You know, we're gonna hire. If they can't hire somebody themselves personally, we shouldn't have voted them in. Nobody's Nobody in government really spends money like it was their money. But I'll tell you why the road's important. The road's important because it's really for Southwest Shawnee County. And lately, all you got to do is say it's for Lake Sherwood, and then everybody will poo poo it because everybody's got such resentments against Lake Sherwood. Well, yeah, maybe Lake Sherwood people might use it to get over here to over there, but it's not really going to be a, it's not really a traffic way for Sherwood. It's more of keeping people off of 29th Street. It's more of people keeping off of 37th Street. It's more people keeping off of Wanamaker if you don't have to go down the street. So I'm for the road. What I'm against is, uh, they, and I literally stopped trying to get anything done with the city of Topeka to support my recovery. I'm not kidding you. We had a planning director whose link is on that email when you read it, who promised us to do planning in that area because you always got to do a study in Topeka. We got to do a study. We're going to study that, and we're going to hire consultants instead of just doing what the law says. If you just follow the MPO or the MTPO, there's your study, and that's all we need to do today. But I don't know if I have time in my lifetime to execute that. I hate giving up, but we gotta get Topeka's gotta get overwhelming response. It's like when we did College Hill. Man, the neighbors came out, they wore their shirts, they stood up. Jerry Farley got the deal through. Well, I'm not the right guy to do it because Topeka doesn't want me to make any money. They have resentments against me. I'm not kidding you. So our planning director, this dude, goes into my College Hill project, and I missed going to the planning commission meeting. I wrote all these letters because they wanted to hear my story. My ego, my ego to try to tell all the drug addicts and alcoholics how I got better overrode the fact that I should have been there as a guy saying, "Don't put a bark park here." But the any idiot that tells me that a bark park is economic development doesn't need to be the director of planning. And so for me to not engage with that fella, it was easier just to say, I'm done. But I've told the property owner, I said, look, let's just forget that there is ever going to be a road there. And let's just thank God that Gage is paved. And I've got a whole plan that I can work around Gage and just ignore that project. Am I willing to help support it and am I for it? Yeah. Yeah, I sure am. And I'm not sure that this video uh really says everything about it. Man, it took me 2 years to get the Catholics to sell me the land. And then I put Dana together with this other guy, and that didn't work out. And then Dana and another guy have been trying to work for the city, and they never could get anything done. You got to figure if Dana K can't get it done, why why am I wasting my time? But the more and more I see Topeka for what it is, it becomes a galactic waste of time. It really does. You know, they're out buying hotels, and I had it all teed up, ready to tear down the Travelers Hotel, and then these big shots. This one big shot guy on city council, you know, I'm down there asking for the money. He marches these people up. Oh no, we don't have the money. We don't have the money to do it. I think there's 17 million in the bank of economic development money, and some of that money is for deals that they've committed for. And then they just the other day they had a $5 million carryover And every project that I've ever brought forward never gets approved because, like Matt Pavarnak said, you got to have the right people. You should have seen this article in CJ Online. They edited that article because if this article was written like in the late 50s, early 60s, the right people would have been like you would if you read it, you would have said, "Man, is he saying was he really thinking the white people?" What was it? What was this guy thinking? But the right people. And that's my huge problem with Go Topeka sucking $1.9 million of the economic development money in overhead. They've got one of they've hired a diversity and inclusion guy. I'm going to start asking those guys for help. Hey, why don't you look at the policies and procedures? Because look, I'm getting discriminated on and it's turned into a slush fund. But you just take 1.9 million and throw it into Elevation Parkway. Take take the 5 million. You're going to have to throw some money at the project. But some other big shot owns some land. You got to condemn the land. You got to get the public involved. And look, my hair's getting gray just talking about it. But you asked. Merry Christmas. Probably got more to say on it, but I'm just going to develop it. Oh man, this is really rich. The guy that owns the land behind me, he's like bitching at me about like, hey, when are you going to get that thing cleaned up? You ought to be pushing all the dirt. He's like, come on. And he said he just had a big meeting with Neil Dobler and the mayor, and in that meeting, they never asked to buy the right of way. And that'd be the first thing I'd want to know. Hey, will you sell the right of way? Because we want to start putting together a budget to buy the right of way and do this deal. No, they never talked about buying the right of way, which that's probably the most important. My neighbor, hey, what are you going to pay me for my right of way? And that's fair. That's fair. But they said, hey, why don't you get some fancy drawings put together and why don't spend some money of how you're going to develop it. And what they're trying to do is to get him to spend money to justify them putting the road in. Because look, if we put that road in, look what this guy's going to do. I've already done that same thing. I already spent the money. I've spent the money on tearing down the trees. I've spent the money, or not, I'm spending Dana Kay's money. I used to own part of that land, and due to um, some other guy, not to mention his name, a client of mine, uh, doing some gymnastics. I needed some cash, and Dana Kay helped me, so he bought my interest out. But that's what happens when you're a street guy. And that's what happens. That's why we need to change. That's why we need to change the economic development. I need to engage the commercial and residential real estate people and get everybody involved. Turn them into the public involvement. The 6 degrees of separation, right? And it's not how hard you work, it's how hard your network works for you. And nobody talks back to the community. This is not cool. If I had a membership at Topeka Country Club, they'd probably want to revoke it. Remember when I was a kid, I belonged to Topeka Public Golf Course. That was where to go. Oh, Jack Wiley. But Dunaway, you're all right. That was so fun getting your job mowing all the fields out of Lake Sherwood. You remember when I turned on the water faucet while you guys were on vacation when I was about 3 years old on Oakley? When you lived on Oakley? That's a good one. I remember when my brother was dating Amy. She was hot. Anyway, I digress. But that's funny. So here's the truth for me. I came back to Mayberry and I can see Mayberry for what it is. When I first came back to Topeka, we had a bunch of abstinence from alcohol in my family. My wife and I were trying to save our marriage. And that's the funny thing about my life is that, once I get started drinking, I don't want to stop. It's really interesting to see Topeka for what it is with these eyes, these clear eyes. But I don't care if it never grows. I know it's not going to turn into Los Angeles. But what I would like to do, I would like to make Topeka a place that my daughter would want to come back to. I was telling her at Christmas time how proud I was of her being in Kansas City. And I need to do some research on this, but I know, see this guy over here, Henry, he was discharged. I'm named after him. He was discharged. He was a Yankee. I think he was a sergeant. He was discharged to Wyandotte, but I think he had some cousins, Bantleons, that go back a couple of generations prior when this was like a territory. And I don't know everything down to the T, but he was a conductor on the railroad and then later became the manager or the foreman of the UP rail yard in Kansas City, Kansas. Lived in Kansas City, Kansas, had a place out at Lake at the Forest. Then, so I'm glad that Bianca Bantleon is in there, getting her feet wet in Kansas City and likes it, and she's got a good job. That's what I love about the Mace Rich Company. Not only did I do more deals than I could ever, it's like in dog years, if my life were in dog years, I just think about all the deals. It took me 2 years to get a Pizza Hut deal done. It's still not done. I tried, you can never break a rule in Topeka. I can't wait for them to take all the credit for bringing back the boulevard. But the right people are doing it. Just remember that. So, should the road go in? Yeah. Well, let's see if it happens in the next 40 years. The road will go in the day the people start taking charge. When the people take back the government, it's our duty to engage. It's our duty to want to do this project. Oh, I forgot to tell you about that meeting with the guy to the west of us that bordered our land there on that project. 15, less than an hour after the meeting, Angela Sharp of Bartlett and West called Dave Herman and said, "Hey, why don't we put some plans together?" Well, why in the hell would we want to put plans? I was the sucker. Why in the hell should I put plans together? Why don't you put the road in? Why don't you agree to put the road in and I'll do the plans? And plus, Dave, right now, all he needs to do is come off one of my roads and he can connect to Summerfield, and he can connect to Skyline Drive. He doesn't need this road either. He can do those connections today. And he's got some of the most beautiful land. Hey, what if I had any money? I'd buy it. But it's going to take big money to have Dave shake loose of that. God, it's so beautiful up on top. You can see the downtown. Man, there's serenity on that hill. But the road isn't going to hurt that serenity. And the road would benefit Southwest Topeka, the very far part of it. But if we had community involvement and the community said, look, we want this road and we want it, and we're willing to put our time and energy to get it. So the big shots that live around it, all we got to do is build one of those walls like they have around the 405 in LA. You can be on either side of that thing, you're not going to hear it. I had a wall like that in my house in Ventura, and it's great, buffered from my swimming pool. Glad to be home, not giving up, but reality is what it is.